There goes Asia potentially. And because that's the number one priority that Europe and Europeans should take care of Ukraine and should take care of their own security. So it's serious thinking, and it's behind a potential Trump administration.
Thank you. Can you just run a few minutes more? Just we have one more question, and if you,
of course.
I'm sorry, Helmut, we didn't see your card that was raised, so the floor is yours. Helmut Scholz.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this interesting briefing or insights in the electoral battle, which will start to be hot. Just two additional questions, maybe. We have spoken a lot about the foreign relations, international security, etc. But as far as I understand, migration will be one of the decisive points in these forthcoming months. So how far the internal, so the home affairs in the United States are or being the decisive factor for the electoral battle between President Biden and Trump. So, and is the agenda of Trump forcing the Democrats here to open also the way to go into the direction as the conservatives, the Republicans want to have it? So what does it mean for the migration policies and for the situation of a lot of Americans who are caring maybe much more about their daily problems than about international security and foreign relations? And the second question I would raise is the transatlantic cooperation. So as far as we are seeing, the cooperation in the TLD is quite limited to be attractive to the House and also to the Senate. The problem I see that if you are caring about getting the votes, you are looking into inside of the US and not into how to reshape and to reform and to restructure really a fair and equal cooperation with the European Union. So do you see that the forthcoming months will change that? And what would your recommendation to be? Should the TLD more emphasize also on the internal developments in the United States, probably also of the European Union, so to get the congresswomen and men attracted to engage in shaping this bilateral relationship? Thank you.
Very important questions. I guess on the, your basic premise that America and Americans, and therefore American leaders, especially those campaigning, are heavily focused on the home front, on the homeland, is absolutely correct. And the focus on migration and the very, very nasty and negative rhetoric around migration will only get worse, in part because there is a real crisis on the southern border. It is not a fiction that the numbers of people crossing the border and the systems and mechanisms and policies in place to manage this are severely lacking, in part because it's been virtually impossible to get comprehensive immigration reform through Congress, in part because the very difficult situation of the Trump years created a basis which made it also very difficult for Biden to manage, and he hasn't succeeded on this front so far. So there is a real problem, and then you add on layers and layers of rhetoric and politics, and those campaigning making use of this for their political advantage, and we have a very toxic situation. I hear things from very intelligent, normal people that stun me, and it's clearly being parroted simply from having watched whatever TV channel they might be watching that is advancing the rhetoric. So, and there is a strong fear amongst many working class white Americans that they're being displaced. It's very real. It's very tangible. I certainly feel it when I talk to people. I guess a couple of things are at stake in this politics. One is, as we know, birthright citizenship. Donald Trump has made it very clear that he would like to remove this fundamental principle that if you're born in the United States, you are American. It's something that most of us just take for granted, can't imagine it not being the case. And it's certainly up for grabs if Donald Trump is elected, although that would be difficult to rewrite. And there are lots of questions around visas, around educational exchange, around whether graduate students studying in the U.S. will, continue to get those visas after they've graduated. I don't know how many of us remember the moment when Donald Trump decided that foreign students studying in U.S. universities, it was during COVID, wouldn't get their visas, that they wouldn't be allowed to go back. I had in my kitchen, in my home in London, I had 6 British Yale students in my home when that decision was made. The trauma that induces in young people is quite extraordinary, and we're likely to see more of that politics. But the politics of Homeland Security, the push, I think the Trump administration plan is that anybody seeking to cross the border will need to stay in Mexico during the period through which their case is being assessed. The politics and the political fallout and the implications for America's neighbors, especially Mexico, but obviously also Central America, will be very significant. And Europe can contribute to this conversation already in a positive way by sharing an understanding of the problems of migration, sharing possible solutions, engaging in the conversation, and recognizing the impact on the politics, especially of the right, and the support for far-right politics and parties is one that bears similarities. If Donald Trump is elected, it's not only about America's right, it's also going to be about Europe's right, because Donald Trump and those who surround him take great pleasure and see it as part of their mission to encourage the mobilization of far-right parties across Europe, because to the extent that Trump would like to see transatlantic relations continue, he'd like them to be a type of transatlantic relations that's invested in a particular brand of conservatism that emphasizes anti-immigration rhetoric and what I would call very illiberal policies. And he sees a home for that in much of Europe's politics and will facilitate it and give impetus to its mobilization in a way that, in my view, should alarm many Europeans. So there's a lot of work to be done. Your second question was on what kind of conversation should take place now? What should the focus be now? Is there already going to be a reluctance to invest in the transatlantic dialogue and conversation because of this domestic focus? And I guess, yes, of course, there will be. I would only add that there are, at the official levels in Congress, a lot of, as you well know, a lot of congressional members who love Europe. They love coming to Europe. They love being in Europe. They like the history of transatlantic relations. They will be at the Munich Security Conference, as they always are. They've come to London, and they will drive and continue to commit to this conversation. We had, in the congressional delegation that visited us last week, we had a couple of committee chairs, very important committee chairs, as well as ranking members. The committee chairs are obviously Republican, and they said below the hood that they are committed to Europe, but that the rhetoric is very much, the rhetoric around immigration and other things that seems to trump that commitment is in large part, it is about the election, but don't be fooled that the commitment is still there and it's still significant. So I think the dialogue will go on. The risk is that it won't be seen and it won't be visible for American people. And so it will be, once again, very much easier in this context for the anti-Europe and the illiberal rhetoric to influence voters. It's not what they vote on, but it certainly is part of the broader package that mobilizes people towards one side or the other.
Thank you very much, Dr. Leslie Vinjamouri. I think you My takeaway, the one takeaway that I want to take from our exchanges with you, which were, I think, moving on many issues beyond what we have traditionally discussed in this context, is that when we think about the transatlantic partnership, I think we have to look beyond the Trump or next Biden. We just have to indeed take a look which is more strategic and long-term, and that's, I think, what is at stake. So I agree with you that the stakes are the highest possible, and the chances, opportunities and risks, we still have to think long-term and find a way through whatever will happen in the next year. Also in Europe, we didn't talk about our elections. We didn't talk about the British elections. There is a lot of challenges, so I can't exclude that we might reach out to you once again one day to talk, to broaden the discussion. Thank you very much. And colleagues,
thank you. It was
thank you.
Great to be here. Thank you very, very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. Colleagues, we have, sorry, I interrupted.
Good luck.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. On point 6, there is no any other business on my side. If anybody has another business, then we know. So I would like to inform you, this is my last point, that we will meet during February. We have 2 plenary sessions. The Secretariat will be in touch with you when and how and with whom we will meet in February. Thank you very much for the meeting.